Imagine this. After years of building your life, your dreams, your business, and your marriage all with your own hands, you suddenly find yourself standing alone in a room full of people who once respected you, only to be undermined by the one person you trusted most. That moment, when betrayal cuts sharper than any blade, when the person who vowed to stand beside you chooses instead to tear down everything you fought for, this is the breaking point. Margaret had spent months preparing for a critical business negotiation. Every detail meticulously crafted, every contract carefully reviewed, all to seal a deal that could change the course of her career and secure her company's future. She wasn't just a partner in the business. She was the driving force, the visionary who kept the company alive and thriving. But on that day, sitting across from her business partners in a sleek conference room in the heart of New York City, something shattered. Her husband, Brian, who was supposed to be her ally, sat quietly, almost as if he were a stranger in the room. When the time came to finalize the deal, he suddenly announced there would be no signing. The words hit Margaret like a thunderclap. The deal she had nurtured, fought for, and believed in was dead, not because of the partners, not because of the contract, but because Brian had decided behind her back that it wasn't worthwhile. No warning, no discussion, just a cold dismissal that made her look powerless and foolish in front of everyone. The silence that followed was deafening, the disbelief, the shock. How could the man she trusted betray her so thoroughly? How could he unravel years of partnership both in business and in life with a single, arrogant decree? It wasn't just the loss of a deal. It was a public humiliation, an erasure of everything Margaret had built with her own blood, sweat, and tears. As she climbed the stairs to their apartment later that evening, every step felt heavier than the last. The weight of betrayal pressed on her chest, threatening to crush her spirit. The man she once called husband followed silently, leaving unspoken wounds that no apology could heal. The space they shared, once a home filled with dreams and hope, now felt cold and alien. And inside her, a storm raged, a mixture of anger, hurt, confusion, and a desperate need to understand why the person she loved had turned into someone so unrecognizable. This was not just a failed business deal, it was the beginning of a collapse of trust, of partnership, of a shared life. And as Margaret stared out the window that night, she knew the real fight was just beginning. This breaking point was the start of a war that would test her strength, her resolve, and her very identity. But what happened next? How did Margaret respond when faced with this betrayal? Did she crumble under the weight, or did she rise from the ashes stronger than before? And what secrets lay buried beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect life together? If you want to uncover the full story of love, betrayal, power, and the fierce battle for justice, make sure you subscribe to our channel. We dive deep into the raw, real stories of marriage and relationships, sharing wisdom gained from years of experience. By subscribing, you'll never miss a moment of these powerful journeys, and you'll support us in creating more meaningful content just for you. Now, before we move on, I have a question for you, a little test to see what you really think about trust and betrayal in relationships. If you were in Margaret's shoes, would you? Confront the betrayal head-on and fight to reclaim your life and dignity. Try to let go and move on quietly, hoping to avoid more pain. Type "will be" in the comments below and share your thoughts. I'm eager to see how many of you choose to fight and how many would try to heal by walking away. Your answers might surprise you, and they'll help us create even better discussions on love, trust, and resilience. Stay tuned for the next part of Margaret and Brian's story, where the battle truly begins. You won't want to miss it. Brian's confession came like a cold gust of wind that swept away the fragile warmth Margaret had clung to for years. The man she had loved, the partner she had trusted through every high and low, revealed a truth so shattering it left her breathless. He had another woman, and she was carrying his child. The words hung heavy in the room, drowning out the noise of the city beyond the windows. In that moment, everything Margaret had built, her marriage, her home, her shared dreams, felt like sand slipping through her fingers. She had always believed their partnership was unbreakable, forged through years of mutual respect and understanding. But Brian's revelation tore that illusion apart. The child he spoke of wasn't just a symbol of a new life. It was a wedge driven mercilessly between them, a living reminder of his betrayal. Her heart clenched, not just from the pain of infidelity, but from the harsh reality that the life they had carefully constructed together was now under siege. Margaret's mind raced, trying to process the storm of emotions crashing inside her: disbelief, anger, sorrow, and a profound sense of loss. She remembered the countless nights spent dreaming of a future where their company would flourish, where they would grow old together in the home they had made theirs. And yet, here she was, facing a man who no longer seemed to recognize the promises they had once made. The confrontation was inevitable, words spilled out, sharp and raw, cutting through years of silence and unspoken doubts. Brian's justifications fell flat against the wall of Margaret's pain. He spoke of needing an heir, of feeling incomplete without a son to carry on his legacy. But his reasoning only deepened the wound. It wasn't just about a child, it was about a betrayal so deep that it threatened the very foundation of their shared life. Margaret stood firm, her voice steady despite the tempest inside. She refused to be sidelined, to become a mere footnote in the story of Brian's new life. The apartment, the business, the memories, they were as much hers as his. She reminded him of their years together, the sacrifices, the victories, the countless decisions made side by side. Yet, Brian seemed determined to erase all of it, to replace the life they had built with something new and unfamiliar. Her mother's warnings echoed in her mind, words she had once brushed aside. "Never put all your eggs in one basket," her mother had said, cautioning her about the risks of mixing love and business so completely. The harsh truth of that advice settled over her now like a heavy cloak. The legal ownership of their assets might be tangled, but the emotional toll was unmistakable. Margaret was being forced to fight not just for her property, but for her dignity, her identity. Brian's demands were clear and merciless. He insisted that his new family would take precedence, that the apartment they shared would soon belong to another woman and her child. The audacity of his claims sent a cold shiver down Margaret's spine. This wasn't just about a place to live. It was a declaration of war, a statement that she was no longer welcome in the life she had helped create. Yet, despite the betrayal and the heartbreak, Margaret refused to break. She knew the road ahead would be painful and uncertain, but she also understood that surrender was not an option. She had to protect what was hers, not out of spite, but because it was her life, her legacy. She began to gather what she could: documents, memories, proof of her partnership in the business and the home. Each piece was a shield, a way to defend herself against the storm Brian had unleashed. The silence between them was deafening. Where once there had been laughter and plans, now there was only cold calculation and unspoken threats. Brian's new life loomed like a shadow over their shared past, casting doubt on everything they had once held dear. Margaret realized that this battle was not just legal, it was deeply personal. It was a fight for respect, for recognition, for the right to exist beyond the role of a discarded wife. In those dark moments, Margaret found an unexpected strength. The betrayal, though searing, became a catalyst for her awakening. She was no longer just the woman who had been sidelined. She was a force to be reckoned with, a partner who would not be erased or forgotten. The love that once bound them might have been broken, but the resolve to claim her rightful place was now unshakable. As she looked ahead, the path was uncertain and fraught with pain. But Margaret understood that this was her crucible, the moment that would define not just the end of a marriage, but the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where she would fight not just for what was hers on paper, but for her dignity, her voice, and her future. The moment Margaret stepped into the cold, sterile courtroom, she felt the weight of every year she had invested in her marriage and business bearing down on her. The battle she was about to face was not merely about dividing assets or splitting financial holdings. It was a fight for justice, for recognition, and for the very essence of her identity. This legal struggle was a battlefield where trust had been shattered, and every document, every signature, every word could tip the scales between loss and vindication. Brian had shut her out from the company they built together, barring her from the office with a calculated finality that felt like a personal exile. She could no longer access the files, the contracts, or even the simple daily communications that once defined her role as a co-founder and managing director. Instead, she was met with locked doors and hushed whispers. The cold reminders of how quickly familiarity can turn into alienation. Her name had been replaced on company documents, and whispers of forged signatures began to circulate, a cruel betrayal that left her grappling not only with pain but with disbelief. It was Alexander, the lawyer she had hesitantly turned to in the aftermath of the divorce's shattering revelation, who became her anchor. A man seasoned in battles of the heart and law, he offered her more than legal counsel. He offered hope. He saw past the surface turmoil and recognized the strength beneath Margaret's weariness. Together, they began to unravel the tangled web Brian had spun, piece by piece. Each court filing, each negotiation, was a testament to Margaret's refusal to disappear quietly. The courtroom became a stage for a drama that transcended typical legal proceedings. Brian's absence at the initial hearings was a strategic ploy to delay the inevitable. The judge's stern declarations and the suspension of the session only intensified Margaret's resolve. She knew the fight would be long and grueling, yet there was no turning back. The forged document naming Gideon as the new coroner was not just a legal weapon. It was an assault on everything Margaret had built. The sting of betrayal was sharpened by the realization that Brian had the audacity to replace her without so much as a conversation. But Margaret was not alone. Alexander's unwavering support and sharp mind were crucial as they prepared to challenge the authenticity of the disputed papers. The prospect of a handwriting analysis brought a flicker of hope amidst the storm. It was a chance to prove the truth, to expose deception, and to reclaim what was rightfully hers. The courtroom battles were punctuated by moments of tension, frustration, and quiet determination. Each hearing tested her endurance, but Margaret grew stronger with every obstacle. Behind the legal jargon and procedural maneuvers lay a more profound conflict: the fight for dignity. Brian's attempts to discredit her through rumors and emotional manipulation only fueled her fire. His emotional pleas about waiting 10 years for a son and questioning her intentions were met with a steadfast calm. Margaret refused to be drawn into the chaos of personal attacks. Instead, she focused on the facts, on the evidence that would restore her name and her place in the business world. The complexity of their shared assets, apartment, summer house, business became a battleground where every detail mattered. The stakes were higher than financial worth. They were about legacy, about survival. Margaret's fight was a powerful reminder that women who build empires alongside their spouses deserve recognition, respect, and fairness. The courtroom was a stark contrast to the life she once knew, but within those walls, she found a renewed sense of purpose. The looming threat of losing the business was terrifying, but Margaret's resolve was unwavering. She contemplated the idea of letting go, of starting fresh, but the thought of surrendering without a fight was unthinkable. With Alexander's encouragement, she embraced the challenge, understanding that justice was not just about winning a case, it was about reclaiming control over her own life. This legal battle was more than a fight for property. It was a journey through betrayal, resilience, and self-discovery. Every document contested, every argument made, was a step toward healing the wounds inflicted by betrayal. As Margaret navigated the treacherous waters of divorce and business disputes, she emerged not just as a victim, but as a warrior determined to shape her own destiny. The courtroom was no longer a place of fear, but a sanctuary of empowerment. With every passing day, Margaret moved closer to breaking free from the shadow of her past, reclaiming her voice, and forging a future built on her own terms. The legal battle was arduous, but within its trials lay the promise of renewal, a testament to the strength of a woman who refused to be erased. Margaret's world had become a whirlwind of uncertainty and pain, but amid the chaos, there was a quiet sanctuary she found in the unexpected presence of Alexander. More than just her lawyer, he became a confidant, a steady hand in the storm of her unraveling life. The legal battle was brutal, but the emotional weight was even heavier. It was in these moments of vulnerability, stripped of pretense and guarded walls, that Margaret began to see the fragile threads of human connection woven through the fabric of her ordeal. Alexander understood that this fight was not just about contracts or property. It was about a woman grappling with the deepest wounds of betrayal and the erosion of trust in the man she once called her partner. His support was not limited to legal advice, it was a balm to her wounded spirit. He listened when she needed to speak, offered counsel when she sought clarity, and stood quietly beside her when the courtroom felt like a cold battlefield. His presence reminded her that she was not alone, that despite the fractured pieces of her life, there were still anchors of compassion and understanding. The whispers and rumours Brian had spread lingered like shadows, isolating Margaret from friends and acquaintances who once formed her support system. Suddenly, she found herself navigating a social landscape rife with suspicion and judgment. The accusations of infidelity and deception were not just lies. They were weapons aimed to dismantle her reputation and erode her resolve. Yet, Margaret's resilience was remarkable. She refused to be defined by falsehoods or to let the bitterness of betrayal consume her identity. It was during these dark times that the true nature of her strength emerged, not as a force born of anger or vengeance, but from a quiet determination to reclaim her narrative. She confronted the rumours not with fire, but with grace, choosing to hold on to the truth of her own story rather than be dragged into the mud of accusations. This grace was a testament to her character, a silent defiance that spoke louder than any argument. One of the most profound moments came when Margaret unveiled a secret she had carried alone for years: the truth behind their childlessness. The infertility was not her burden but Brian's, a reality she had shielded him from out of love and protection. This revelation was both a release and a reckoning. It stripped away layers of blame and misunderstanding, exposing the raw, painful reality beneath the surface of their fractured relationship. The weight of that secret had been a heavy cross to bear, one that Margaret had carried silently to preserve Brian's pride. Now, with that truth laid bare, there was a new complexity to their story, a mixture of sorrow, regret, and the undeniable humanity that had been obscured by anger and betrayal. It was a moment that humanized them both, reminding Margaret that even in brokenness, there were depths of love and sacrifice that defied simple judgments. Alexander witnessed these revelations with a mix of respect and empathy. He saw beyond the legal documents and court arguments to the heart of a woman whose life had been upended not just by divorce, but by the shattering of trust and the unraveling of shared dreams. His role evolved from advocate to ally, a man committed not only to winning her case, but to supporting her emotional journey through the pain. Their growing bond was subtle but profound. In a world that had turned cold and hostile, Alexander's kindness was a rare warmth. Margaret found herself drawn to his steadiness, the calm assurance he brought to the chaos. He was a reminder that even in the aftermath of loss, connection and compassion could still bloom. Their conversations were laced with both professional determination and quiet moments of shared humanity, where the walls of legal strategy gave way to genuine understanding. Despite the mounting pressures, Margaret began to see glimpses of hope. Alexander encouraged her to take time for herself, to rest and recharge amid the relentless demands of the legal battle. It was a foreign concept to someone so used to fighting, but gradually she recognized the importance of nurturing her own well-being. This small act of self-care became a revolutionary act of resistance against the forces trying to consume her. The rumors, the courtroom dramas, the relentless challenges, all these could not extinguish the spark within Margaret. She was learning to stand not only as a claimant to property, but as a woman reclaiming her voice and her story. The path ahead remained difficult, but she was no longer walking it alone. With Alexander's support and a renewed sense of inner strength, she was ready to face whatever lay ahead. In these moments of emotional revelation and support, Margaret discovered something unexpected, that even in the depths of betrayal and loss, there could be moments of grace, connection, and profound personal growth. It was a reminder that healing is never linear, that the journey through heartbreak can lead not just to survival but to transformation. And as she moved forward, she carried with her the knowledge that while the past could not be changed, the future was hers to shape with courage, dignity, and the unbreakable power of the human spirit. The courtroom was packed, its austere walls closing in on Margaret as the moment she had prepared for so long finally arrived. This was more than a legal proceeding. It was the culmination of a journey marked by betrayal, heartbreak, and fierce determination. The air was thick with tension, every gaze fixed on the two figures at the center of the storm: Margaret and Brian, once partners in life and business, now adversaries locked in a battle that transcended contracts and assets. Brian entered the room with a demeanor that betrayed a fragile confidence. He carried the weight of his own turmoil, but was determined to present a facade of control. His lawyer stood close, a silent reminder that this was not just a personal conflict, but a strategic confrontation. The judge, poised and impartial, signaled the beginning of the session, her presence commanding the respect that this battle demanded. As Alexander presented Margaret's case, his voice steady and resolute, the judge listened intently. The legal arguments were clear. The assets had been acquired during the marriage, entitling each party to an equal share. Yet, Brian's objections soon followed emotional pleas that attempted to sway the court with the weight of his personal losses and claims of fatherly rights. He painted a picture of himself as a man wronged, a father denied an heir's legacy, hoping to cloud the facts with sentiment. Margaret sat quietly, gripping the strap of her bag, every nerve taut but her resolve unwavering. She knew that this was more than a legal fight. It was a battle for her dignity and for the future she had envisioned. Brian's words, though laden with pain and desperation, could not erase the truth that the law was clear, and the evidence was in her favor. The courtroom drama escalated when Brian's lawyer introduced the forged document claiming Margaret had voluntarily transferred her business shares. The revelation struck like a thunderclap. Margaret's protest was immediate and fierce. She had never signed such papers willingly. The accusation of forgery added a new layer of complexity to the case, highlighting the depths Brian was willing to sink to retain control. The judge, stern and commanding, did not allow the proceedings to devolve into personal attacks. She issued warnings and maintained order, ensuring the focus remained on the facts. Alexander's request for a handwriting analysis was granted, a small but significant victory that promised to expose the truth. As the days passed, Margaret grappled with the uncertainty that hung over her. The delays and tactics designed to wear her down tested her patience, but they also strengthened her resolve. With Alexander's support, she prepared for every hearing, every question, every challenge. The courtroom became a place where her strength was forged anew. Outside the courtroom, the emotional toll was equally profound. Margaret faced the loneliness of a life upended, the alienation from friends swayed by rumors, and the daunting prospect of starting over. Yet, within her grew a fierce determination not just to survive, but to reclaim her narrative and rebuild on her own terms. The turning point came when the handwriting analysis confirmed what Margaret had always believed: the signature was forged. This revelation was more than a legal victory. It was a reclaiming of truth and justice. Brian's web of deceit was unraveling, and Margaret's rightful place was being restored piece by piece. In the aftermath of the court's decisions, Margaret stood at a crossroads. The business she had built was hers again, but the journey had changed her irrevocably. She contemplated letting go, stepping away from the battles and the memories, seeking peace in a fresh start. Yet, the fire that had been kindled within her would not be easily extinguished. Alexander, ever the steadfast ally, encouraged her to embrace the future with hope. The past, with all its pain and betrayal, was a chapter closed. Ahead lay new beginnings, opportunities to forge a life defined not by loss, but by resilience and renewal. Margaret understood that healing would be neither quick nor easy. The scars of betrayal ran deep, and trust, once broken, was slow to mend. But in the quiet moments between the court sessions and the legal wrangling, she found a strength that surprised even herself, a strength born not of denial, but of acceptance and courage. As she stepped out of the courtroom for the final time, Margaret felt a lightness she had not known in years. The battle was won, but more importantly, she had reclaimed her voice and her agency. The future was hers to write, a canvas blank yet brimming with possibility. This was not just the end of a chapter, it was the beginning of a new story. One where Margaret would no longer be defined by the shadows of betrayal, but by the radiant resilience of a woman who had faced darkness and emerged stronger, ready to embrace the promise of new dawns and the hope of happiness yet to come. Life has a way of testing us beyond what we imagine, often in the most unexpected and painful ways. Margaret's story is a powerful reminder of the complex interplay between love, trust, betrayal, and resilience. Through her journey, we witness not just the unraveling of a marriage and business partnership, but the profound human capacity to face adversity with courage and grace. Her struggle was not merely about dividing assets or proving legal points. It was a quest to reclaim her identity, her dignity, and her right to be seen and heard. In life, few things cut deeper than betrayal, especially when it comes from someone you once trusted implicitly. Margaret's experience teaches us that while pain may be inevitable, how we respond to that pain defines us. It is possible to emerge from the darkest storms not as broken people, but as individuals transformed by their trials, stronger and more self-aware. Her unwavering determination, her refusal to be silenced or sidelined, embodies the spirit of resilience that many of us must call upon at various points in our own lives. One of the deepest lessons here is the importance of self-worth and standing firm in one's truth. In the face of false accusations and attempts to diminish her, Margaret chose dignity over despair. She recognized that the battle was not just external, but internal, fighting not only for what was rightfully hers, but for her own sense of self. This is a lesson for all of us. No matter how hard life may try to convince us otherwise, our value is inherent and worth defending. Another vital insight is the significance of support and connection. Margaret's story is also about finding allies when you feel most alone, whether it's a trusted friend, a compassionate professional, or simply a new source of strength that surfaces from within. No one has to face life's battles in isolation. Reaching out for help, accepting support, and allowing others to stand with us can be the difference between being overwhelmed and overcoming. Applying these lessons to our own lives means cultivating resilience by nurturing our inner strength and building networks of trust and encouragement. It means facing challenges head-on with clarity and courage, while also honoring our emotional needs by seeking support and rest when needed. It reminds us to protect our dignity and truth fiercely, to never let others' judgments or actions define who we are. Moreover, Margaret's journey highlights the importance of clarity in partnerships, whether in marriage, business, or friendship. Clear communication, mutual respect, and shared values are the foundation upon which lasting relationships are built. And when those foundations crack, it's crucial to stand firm, know your worth, and seek justice not just legally, but emotionally and spiritually. To our viewers, I ask this simple question: what is one lesson you've learned from a difficult experience that has helped you grow stronger? Please share your thoughts by commenting below. Your stories and perspectives are valuable and can inspire and support others who may be facing their own battles. If you found value in this story and the insights shared, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your subscription helps us continue producing meaningful content that touches on real-life struggles and triumphs. And if you're able, donating any amount, big or small, would greatly encourage us to keep dedicating time and effort to sharing knowledge and wisdom with our community. Though the author is getting older, the commitment to creating positive impact remains steadfast, and every bit of support fuels that mission. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for being part of this journey. Together, we can find strength in shared stories and build a community rooted in understanding, resilience, and hope.